Hi guys, thank you for joining us for installment number 11 of The Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino. I hope everyone is doing well out there. It's great to see you all as usual. For those of you that are new to this program, my name is Chloe. I'm the video editor at Jazz at Lincoln Center, but I'm here to host this session tonight. Alexa will be speaking tonight with saxophonist, composer, recording artist, and educator Jimmy Greene. Together, they'll discuss what being a well-rounded musician means to them and how they've been making the most out of quarantine. When it's time to get some questions from you all, I'll jump back in and explain how to do that. But for now, please feel free to use that chat function here on Zoom or the comments section on Facebook, which we'll be monitoring throughout the class. That all being said, we hope you enjoy the session of The Well-Rounded Musician, and I'll turn things over to Miss Alexa Tarantino.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. So happy to be back. Can't believe it's number 11. Wow. If you were with us last week, we had an awesome conversation with Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, and I'm very excited to have one of my favorite people, inspirations on the instrument and just in life, Jimmy Greene. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow. That's quite an intro, Alexa. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get to see each other that often, but I have to tell, the people that Jimmy and I are both from Connecticut. So we are, we're like fam. It just happens. That's just what happens.
Right.
So I think I first met Jimmy at maybe Litchfield Jazz Camp. Might have been the first time when I was a student, and I remember my parents were really into seeing you play around Connecticut. My dad would always cut out newspaper articles of who's playing where for me to read, and I would come home and it would say, Jimmy's playing at the church down the street, or, all these, or Chris Allen, or whoever, that your whole crew of friends and peers. So just so great to have you, and thanks for making the time. For anyone who has not met Jimmy, he's a Grammy-nominated saxophonist, as Chloe said, recording artist, educator, composer. He teaches at Western Connecticut State University, otherwise known as WestCon in Danbury. And so in that respect, just one of the first people that I thought of for the well-rounded musician. And in addition to that, so many recordings and touring as a sideman with people like current people such as Dee Dee Bridgewater and Kenny Barron, Lewis Nash, and then people that, I started listening to the records of, such as Ron Carter and Freddie Hubbard and Tom Harrell. So just such an awesome wide range. So thank you, Jimmy, and welcome.
Alexa, thank you so much for having me. And you're very modest, but I could talk just as glowingly about you and all the stuff you've done. And what you mentioned at the beginning, about when I would be playing around Connecticut and your parents, so awesome that they, kind of make let it be known, hey, Alexa, let's go. It takes a community, right? This music it's a social music, it's a community music, and it grows in communities. And, I'm so glad that we're from the same community and that I could be part of yours and you could be part of mine. And there were musicians that I ran around to see when I was in high school, like Abraham Burton and Eric McPherson, when they were at the Hart School, man. I didn't miss the time when they played in town.
Right.
So it continues and continues. So it's a pretty cool thing about our music.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to just say, in terms of over the course of this, we have a storm happening here in Connecticut. So over the course of these past several weeks, we've gone in and out of a bunch of different topics, and a lot of the questions kind of just center around how do you get a gig? How do you keep a gig? What do I have to know when I get out of school? All of this practical stuff. And I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of the advice that I will offer, or in my experience, my humble experience, and then people that other things that people chime in, it all comes down to being a good person and being kind and generous and easy to work with. And so I hope that the audience will take the opportunity to ask you, as you are as an excellent example of that. So let's kick it off. Let's just get started. How about you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now in quarantine? I know we've been here for a while, so I'm curious to hear what's keeping you motivated and excited.
Well, I think your topic of being a well-rounded musician, at least when I think about that, what it means is that you apply yourself to many different aspects of musicianship, right? Not just the playing aspect, but the writing aspect, the teaching aspect, the business aspect, and what I'm learning now, the technology aspect. So if you really kind of put your efforts into all those things, you're really busy.
Yeah.
So during the quarantine, I've been really busy trying to stay on my instrument. I've been posting, most weekends I post just a little short recording of myself playing a hymn. It's a very challenging time for all of us, and for me personally, hymns kind of comfort me and kind of give me a sense of groundedness and security. So hopefully that is true for others as well. And I've been getting great feedback with that. Um, I've been doing a lot of writing. I wrote an arrangement of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And I've been working on my big band arrangements. I wrote several while I was a doctoral student at Manhattan School of Music. And I'm kind of going back there now, as far, not going back to MSM, but going back to writing for big band and
Right.
kind of reimagining some tunes I've written in the past as big band arrangements and writing some new music as well. So there's that. There's the technology thing, like this microphone and this computer setup, and not only Zoom and WebEx and all the stuff that we use, as professors at the university, but the recording software Logic Pro and dealing with the pick, play, post, and acapella and all the things to kind of do virtual recordings with folks. It's kind of kicking me in the butt. It's like a crash course and all this stuff. So I've been pretty busy with that. As Alexa mentioned, I'm a professor at WestCon, and we've been dealing with how we're going to make this upcoming semester the best experience we could possibly make it for all our students. So we've been kind of dealing with all that too. So I'm preparing for the semester, and as I shared with you a little earlier, my family and me moved in the springtime, which was kind of crazy, but we've been kind of settling into our home, and in the absence of being comfortable calling a bunch of different folks like whatever, handymen or landscapers or people to come in your house during pandemic, I don't feel super comfortable with that. So I've had to learn how to do a lot of this stuff myself, which, I'm not totally foreign to it. I've done a lot of it in the past, but not like this much. So I'm learning a lot about what I do know and a heck of a lot about what I don't know. So it's been a busy time. And then, trying to spend as much time as I can with my son, who's home from school, and my wife as well, who's working from home, has been working from home since the beginning of the pandemic, and just trying to figure out this whole new normal that we have, with all the disinfectants and the groceries and having to wipe stuff down and masks and all. It's a lot going on for all of us. So I've been pretty busy during this time.
Amazing. So what's the best household home improvement project that you've done so far?
Wow. Let's see. The best. I don't know if any of them. I mean, they're all pretty
worst.
small. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done anything like.
I see.
There's some big projects that I'd like to do, but I don't have nearly the expertise to be able to do. But I did, from soup to nuts, install an entire. It seems small, but for me, it was very intimidating for some reason. Install a doorbell, which is not just a thing that you push outside. It's the chime box in the hallway, and then it's the transformer that hooks up to your electrical panel. And so I had to figure out how to do all that stuff, and
Wow.
we have a nice video doorbell outside of our house. So that's one of the things I had no idea how to approach, and just, hey, you got to figure this out. So
amazing. That's great for whenever people come over again, right?
That's right. Yeah. One of my neighbors joked, yeah, wow, you really
prioritizing.
Yeah, right. You pick the time where no one comes over to install a doorbell. Good job.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. So yeah, so for the well-rounded musician, we get such a wide range, I think, of viewers, from people who are emerging, either graduating high school going into college,
Mm-hmm.
college going out into the real world, or even parents of students in music conservatories who maybe aren't. I mean, oh, Nelva's on Facebook saying that you're doing a great job around the house.
All right. Shout out to my lovely wife.
Thanks, Nelva. um, That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, so we get a wide range, and even maybe people who are educators and who are sort of directing students who are going into this real world, and maybe things have changed and they're looking for advice. So, but I think one thing that stays constant is everybody's seems eager to hear how people are managing their time and any sort of daily routines, even to just keep you feeling mentally well or physically well. So, do you have some things that you do every day that you know you just have to get in order to move on with your day or to be
Yes.
successful?
Yes. During this whole time, I find if I don't exercise and I don't practice, I just feel like lost. I feel like, well, I wasted my day if I don't do those two things. So I try to do some sort of physical activity, whether it's ride the stationary bike or, go for a long walk or do whatever. I try to I do that every day, and then I got to get on my instrument and practice and think about music, right, and get at the piano and do something every day. It's different every day. I have a different, kind of set of responsibilities on any given day. But if I do those two things, all right, then I feel good at the end of the day. And I've been doing a lot more reading now as well. Um,
Nice.
so, and I've been, there's a lot of projects I have on the back burner, like writing a book, and obviously I'm always trying to compose but if I do those two things every day, if I get on my instruments and play some, and I move my body, I work out a little bit, I feel much better.
Great. And I mean, for me, I'm asking actually sort of for me because they're my two things as well. And I feel like there are some days where it's so hard to stay motivated because there are no gigs or
Right.
very little, in person gigs, let's say. So how are you staying motivated on the horn?
Well, knowing that every weekend, right, I have to play a new hymn. Some of them I learn, I might have been vaguely familiar with before, but I have to learn them, in order to play them. So, and I don't want to ever record myself or put out some recording of myself that I'm not happy with.
Right.
So that keeps me motivated on the horn. It's kind of fear. Fear of not sounding the way I want to. That keeps me motivated. But no, you can find little things to motivate you. Like for example, right now, um, I need to get some reads together, right? So I'll give myself a little challenge. Today, you're gonna play through, you know, a box of reads, and you're gonna do your whole read routine with all of them. So then I have a focus. It's not this big mountain of what am I going to do today with my saxophone. It's like I have a thing I got to do, right? So I get it done, and when in the process of getting it done, well, how do I test the reeds? Well, I play long tones, I play scales, I play, kind of quiet, I play a little loud. So I'm doing a lot of the things that, oh, this is practicing. So I'm not just in my mind, I'm fixed on a small task, right? Preparing reeds. But what actually is happening is I'm practicing. So
Hmm.
um, you can feel good about that. In most aspects of being a musician, if you work on one thing, you're working on multiple things. If you work on scales, you're also working on rhythm. You're also working on articulation. You're also working on your sound. You're working on your technique. So you can feel good about if you just focus on, I'm going to play scales today, for X amount of time. You will have worked on a bunch of other things besides scales. So,
Yeah. Nice. So, as you are mentoring many students through WestCon,
mhm.
is being well-rounded something that you encourage? What avenues do you encourage people to be well-rounded in? Or are you of the mindset maybe that at certain times being well-rounded can be maybe too difficult to manage too many different things? What do you feel about that?
Well, I feel ultimately it's to everyone, every professional musician's or an aspiring professional musician's benefit to be very well rounded. Um, Given that I can speak for myself, like at different points of my career, I focus more or less on various aspects of that, you know? So, for example, like when I was in college, right? When I was an undergraduate at the Hart School, most of my focus, laser focus, was on playing, right? I
Mhm.
was just about playing. And also, thankfully, I had the inspiration to want to start doubling too. As a saxophone player, it's pretty imperative that you double. So I was able to, I had to knock on a lot of doors and question a lot of rules in place at the Hart School at the time, but I was able to take a semester's worth of flute lessons with the flute professor at Hart, Janet Arms, who's a wonderful teacher, and I learned so much from. So I really got into the flute. I do have to admit that I ran away from the clarinet for a long time. I don't know why. It's just for some reason it just intimidated me, and I think I relied on like listening to others talk about it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So professionally, when it came time to play in people's groups, and I was asked to play clarinet, I would hem and haw, and I'd ask if I could play the parts on soprano instead because I love soprano. I have played it for some time, and but the answer would be, well, I wrote for clarinet for a reason. Like there's a timbre that I need. So, after much embarrassment, it took me until probably 3 years ago, really, to like actually stop BSing and get on and like actually work a little bit on the clarinet. And I was like, why was I so intimidated? Not that it's easy, but I have a long way to go. But it's like, why was I so intimidated? It's like you tell yourself things,
Yeah.
whatever. So, any young musician, any young saxophone player, don't be intimidated by the other woodwinds. Just jump right in. It's not going to be, if you've been a saxophone player for most of your life, it'll be uncomfortable for a little while. But with time and with effort and with good advice from very skilled players on those instruments around you, you'll get better, and you can't expect to be great overnight. It's a process, right? But you'll be happy that you went through the process early rather than late like me. So well-rounded as a woodwind player, yeah, I would say that. And as far as a musician in general, when I started the doctoral program at Manhattan School of Music, Justin DeChocho was the head of the jazz arts division, and he had this model that he used. It was like a triangle, and he said the modern musician must excel in three areas, and each area was at one of the points of the triangle: performance, composition, and pedagogy. You know, so basically, being able to perform at a very high level, right? To be able to compose and arrange and prepare music at a very high level, and to be able to talk about it and explain it and develop a way of communicating, at a very high level too, which is the pedagogy part. So I feel like being well-rounded in all those areas, it sustains you in times where one might not be available, like if we can't go and play now, so we're relying on the other aspects of our musicianship to sustain us. So if we weren't able to do one of those other things, then the others would have to sustain us. So the more things that you're good at as a musician, right? Like I said before, at some points in your career, you're going to focus on one more than the other, and that's okay, right? But the more things that you put your time and effort into as a musician, I think the longer and more rewarding experience career you're going to have.
Great. So can you add a little bit more about your decision to do your doctorate
Sure.
and how that panned out?
Yep. At the beginning, I wanted to. I moved with my family from Connecticut to Winnipeg, Manitoba, to accept a position teaching at the University of Manitoba, which I met so many great students there. Folks that are in New York now, Curtis Noasad and Luke Selleck, and really great play. They were like students then, and so I have a lot of fond memories of my interactions with them at that point. But anyway, I moved there and was hired with just a bachelor's degree. And more and more institutions want, graduate degrees. At the time, University of Manitoba didn't, which was just fine. I was able to kind of do what was asked of me, right? And I felt like I could do it competently. But, teaching at a collegiate level, I felt like I didn't know as much about pedagogy. All right. I knew about my own experience because thankfully, because of Jackie McLean putting me to teach at the Artist Collective when I was a freshman at Hart, and for Dave Santoro giving the opportunity to teach at the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts several years later, I felt comfortable teaching with students, but I didn't feel like, I knew as much as I wanted to as far as pedagogy. So that motivated me to get a master's degree. And my master's was in music education, and it was done remotely at Boston University. I learned a ton about teaching and about pedagogy and about just my own philosophy, and researched a lot of other avenues as far as education is concerned. So my doctorate, I really and honestly wanted to pursue a doctorate, not just to be called doctor, but because there's one person at Manhattan School of Music that I wanted to study with, and that's Jim McNeely. Yeah. I've been a fan of his writing for a long time. And, I when I started at University of Manitoba, I taught an arranging class, and I also conducted the jazz orchestra. And I really got into big band writing. And I really wanted to study with someone who was a master of it. And I like I said, I always loved Jim's writing. So yeah, I when we got back here, that was something I really wanted to do. I wanted to focus on writing, and I got so much more because, like I said, Justin designed the program to focus not on just the compositional part, but the performance and the pedagogy. But I have to say, in that program, the thing I loved about it most is that most of my efforts were spent either composing, arranging, or on learning more improvisational, harmonic, melodic devices to apply to that. So I got exactly what I wanted out of that experience. It was really awesome. So I went into the experience wanting to just become a better writer, and I got like a ton more stuff. So.
That's amazing. So you were balancing that while also teaching at WestCon, right?
Oh my goodness!
I think I saw you a couple of years ago, and you were in the middle of everything.
Yeah. I finished that program. I finished my doctorate in the spring of 2018, and I started it in the fall of 2013. So wow. It was like 4.5 years of a lot of waking up at 5 a.m. to write every morning until 7:30, at which point I'd get ready for my day. My teaching day, at WestCon. And if I was playing at night or if I was on the road, then I'd, have my laptop with me and do my writing and that stuff, so it was a lot. But I loved every second of it. I felt I was learning so much. And when you really love it, it's not work. It's stuff I would be doing anyway. I probably wouldn't be waking up at 5 a.m. anyway, but it's stuff I would be doing anyway. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, congrats, doctor.
Thank you.
So, looking back, kind of to what I added in the beginning about you playing with people like Horace Silver and Freddie Hubbard, and now being a mentor to students yourself, what are some of the biggest lessons that you took away from those experiences that you'd be willing to share with the audience?
Sure. I often find that when I think about playing with Horace, that was, I played with him right when I finished as an undergraduate at the Hart School. So I auditioned for his band maybe a month after, not even, like a couple weeks after graduation, after commencement. I auditioned for his band at Don Sickler's studio in New York with several other tenor players and a bunch of trumpet players and a bunch of bass players. We all were there, and he had us play. one by one, he recorded it, and he had this old school. I don't even know if you've ever seen one of these. It's like a tape deck. There's like a cassette, and then the top of this big piece of metal, there's a speaker. At the bottom, there's like 5 big buttons, like play, record, rewind, fast forward, and stop.
Yeah.
So he had one of these big old school record. So he recorded this, and from note one, his rhythm was so incredibly strong. Like him comping at the keyboard, unbelievable power. And he was, he was kind of advanced in age by then. He was what, 70 at that point, almost 70. And so thankfully he heard enough from me that he wanted to hire me. I was so honored. And Ryan Kaiser was in the band, and John Weber and Willie Jones. So we were the quintet. So our first concert we rehearsed, once or twice, and our first concert was at the Clef Club in Philadelphia. And I just remember listening to all those great Horace Silver records,
Mm-hmm.
If you really, they don't take like long solos on the records, because it's a record. It's not like a live concert, but I guess that was my frame of reference. And we never talked about it, but Ryan as well, we got on there our first set, and we had our best suit and ties on, and Horace, all of us had suits and ties and trying to look as like just dapper as we could. Horace had this like green flannel shirt, wasn't concerned with that as much. But anyway, the band sounded so good, and it was so much fun to play. But I thought to myself, this is not Jimmy Greene on the marquee, it's Horace Silver, right? So I'm going to just take my couple choruses, all right, and play as great as I can, interact with the band as much as I can, and then get out of there, all right? Because I don't want to be up there, hot dogging on Horace Silver's gig on my first night. Let's just take it slow.
Yeah.
So we had 2 sets. So after the first set, we go backstage, and Horace says, I can't do his voice very well. He has such a distinctive voice. I'll butcher it, but I'll try anyway. He said, listen, y'all, I want y'all to play short solos. I mean, I need you to stretch. I want you to find something. I want you to search for something. I want you to stretch. And I was like, really? And you play saxophone too, Alex. You don't have to tell a saxophone player twice to play longer solos. That's our norm, right?
Yeah.
So from that point, I felt so free. It's like, wow, I'm playing with the great Horace Silver, and I can blow as long as needed.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, Alexa, that is the same advice I got from Ron Carter after our first set at Birdland. The first gig I played with him at Birdland was 3 years ago, in 2017, and same
I
deal.
think I was there.
Wow.
I think I saw that gig. Yeah.
Wow. So same thing. Like we're playing all Ron's tunes, and again, it's not my name on the marquee; it's Ron Carter. So let me, play as great as I can and get out of there. So feature him, right? And he pulls me aside, same exact thing Horace said. Don't just play 2 choruses and sit down. I want you to stretch. And one of the coolest pieces of insight that I've gotten, and it kind of pulled all sorts of ideas and thoughts I had about Ron and his playing together. He said, if you play short, you're actually cutting me off, because I'm developing my bass lines chorus to chorus behind you to try to take the music somewhere. And if you just play 2-3 choruses and get out, like we're in the middle of something. He said in his typical way, he said, don't worry, I'll let you know when the solo's over. And ever since then, it's been that same kind of free feeling. It's like, let's just open our minds, open our ears. He's going to throw some bass notes, and some sequences that, are sometimes very unexpected, but always make perfect sense and always in great context. And let's just go with that. Let's just find it's going to change my conception of being a soloist, right? Because it's a group statement. It's not me playing, right? It's a group statement. The group is playing, and it's going to go in a certain direction. Where it goes, I can't control, right? I can just be along and be a part of the discussion, you know. So that's a great feeling. So those are two, the same piece of advice I got from two of the great grandmasters of this music.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember seeing that band at Birdland, and Rini was playing piano, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I that
He's
was
so great, yeah. And Peyton Crossley playing drums. It's such a
yeah,
blast to play with them.
that was so that's I love that. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Sure everybody appreciates. So,
And I want to share something before we take Q&A. I want to share something about you, Alexa.
oh.
So I did, Bob Snyder called me it was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago almost, to
Yeah,
come
yeah.
up to Eastman to kind of be a guest artist, do a master class, and then play a concert with some student players. And I thought, oh, great. You know, Eastman always has some great players, so it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, so I go up to Rochester, and I knew that you were there, right? And so I get there and do the master class, fine. Then we go to do the concert, and I'm thinking, like, you know, he put me with a rhythm section, which I expected, but he also put you on the concert, and I was like, well, that's an interesting choice, like to have another saxophone player, not a trumpet player or trombone, but I was like, well, you know, he knows that Alexa and I are both from Hartford, and he knows that, you know, we've known each other in the past. Like, you know, I played with her high school when she was in high school, so we have this connection, right? That's why he got Alexa on the gig. So I was like, cool, let's do it. And you started playing, and I was like, wait a second here. Bob didn't put Alexa on because of our connection. Bob put Alexa on because she's the baddest person here. Like, you were killing. I was like, wow, okay, yes, this is what I'm talking about.
Oh my gosh.
This is what's possible. That's really awesome. So from that
Well,
moment, I was like, yep, I've been closely watching the stuff you do because you're
oh
doing
man.
tremendous things.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I remember that gig. I actually remember you called Recordame, and I was like so nervous. I was like, do I remember all the chords? It's just one of those moments, you know, when there's like a lot going on, and I was like just trying to play it cool, you know, trying to just make sure you cover all the bases.
No, you
So
were great.
I'm glad it went over, but I remember, I mean, you know, it's those big guest artist days. I remember just being such a big deal.
Well, it's, you know, he was very wise to put you in that position, and you know, because you definitely stood out. Your sound and your concept and your rhythm and all that stuff, just tremendous.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I mean, it's just, it's like you said from the beginning, it's a community, and it's really an honor, for me to be able to even just have a small, you know, just not a small thing, but have a small hour. You know, I know we can't be together, but just to talk, and I hope it can inspire other people who maybe you're not from Connecticut, but maybe you're somewhere else, you know, and just
And talk
needing.
about well-rounded. I got a chance to see you in action as an educator at the Rockport Music Camp, and the environment you created there was such a warm, welcoming, supportive environment that you created there for all the students and for the faculty there. So kudos to you for being so well-rounded.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I remember now after that gig, I don't know why Recorded Me, what it was about that moment in time, but after that I was like, okay, I'm never gonna worry about. I know that tune. I'm never gonna worry about that one. You know,
Good.
there's just those tunes sometimes where you blank, and you like when you're learning at that stage, even now still, but you're like, okay, so whenever that's kind of what I associate. It's so funny. It's so funny. It's, you know, just what happens. Anyway, so before we open for Q&A, this question could go on. This is a large question, but here at Jazz at Lincoln Center this month, we're centering our energy and focus and intention on the word freedom. And this can go in so many directions, you know, whether it's talking about current events or talking about creative freedom and what makes you feel free on stage. What comes to mind for you, and what would you like to share about that?
Wow, that is a very big, broad.
I know.
Well, if you're talking about as a musician, freedom, I think what we started talking about at the beginning was kind of routine and practice. I remember Jackie McLean saying one time, the biggest benefit of practice is confidence when you're actually playing, right? And when you're in my experience, when you're confident playing and you feel like you can play what you're hearing, you feel totally free, you know. So the freedom actually comes from routine. The freedom comes from kind of discipline. You know, I remember hearing an interview with Mike Tyson, the boxer, right? And he said, I won't try to imitate his voice either, but he said, discipline is doing something you hate like you love it.
Huh.
It always stuck with me. It's like, wow, discipline is doing something you hate like you love it. So there's things that you ought to do that you don't feel like doing, but after doing this, I'm going to feel much better about it. So the routine and the discipline, I think, lends to freedom.
Yeah.
And that you can spin that forward into kind of a bigger artistic picture. Like the more prepared you are for any situation, the more music you've investigated. I often talk about Tom Harrell. You mentioned him at the beginning as someone I played with. I played in his band for 5 years. His compositional palette is so big, right? Like he can write tunes that are really kind of beautiful and diatonic, like lullabies, and tunes that are very jagged and atonal in nature and dissonant, but they all are his vocabulary. They're all his, sound.
Mm-hmm.
And he's investigated a lot of music. He can talk to you about the Beatles or about Charlie Parker or about Sibelius or about Scriabin or anybody at length. And he can sit down at the piano and play through stuff for you. He's investigated a lot of music. So when it comes time for him to write, it's like the doors are blown off. Everything's wide open. So that kind of freedom, I think is important. If we're dealing with current events and talking about freedom, that is a long conversation. But I will say this. Freedom in America is an ideal that we haven't really realized yet. Especially for people of color, African Americans. My son is at an age now where he's gonna, we're like teaching him how to drive a car, right?
Wow.
And at one, I remember when I learned how to drive a car, it's thrilling, right? It's thrilling to like kind of imagine yourself with that kind of freedom as you're learning, right? But I'm scared to death too, of what might happen if if for some reason some police officer finds some reason to stop him, So how free am I as a parent? Like because that impacts my decision making. That fear of that outcome impacts my decision making. That hampers my freedom, which in turn, makes him less free because I don't feel comfortable with certain aspects of him being given that freedom. So how free are we really? So I think freedom requires this ideal of freedom requires a really kind of sober sense of responsibility, and we've dealt with this, for some time. My daughter, as many of you might know, was killed in her classroom at Sandy Hook School in 2012. And we've been involved in the gun safety conversation since then, and the Second Amendment of the United States is something that has, been a talking point in the freedom to bear arms, the freedom to do this. Well, these freedoms come with very grave, sober responsibilities, because if they're not, then we see, and unfortunately my family's experienced firsthand what the outcomes could be if we're not responsible with the freedoms we have. So like I said, we could talk all day about this,
Yeah.
and but yeah, freedom is something that we all should take a step back and really consider, from many perspectives, not just our own, what that means.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing, and it's great to hear what you have to say, and it's inspiring on all perspectives. So I think it's just about time for us to open up for the audience to jump in. Chloe, how you feeling out there?
Yeah, let's do it. Lots of love on Facebook. Lots of shout outs to Connecticut, which might be the first time that's happened on a Facebook Live for Jazz Lincoln Center, at least.
That's right, baby.
DT.
DT.
All right. A couple people ask similar questions. Both Darren and Johnny asked this question, but I'm going to read the way that Johnny phrased it because I think it's really interesting. He asks both of you, can you each give one example of each of these that command your respect, awe, inspiration, and why? And one is a predecessor, two is a contemporary, and three is an up-and-coming musician.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Let's start with Jimmy. Go ahead, Jimmy.
A predecessor. There's so many. Like, how could I?
Yeah.
Well, I could name maybe 20, but the one I will name is not only someone who I am influenced by heavily on recording, right? Because we can name, many that I am, but who also impacted me as a man and a human being, and that's Jackie McLean. I was able to study with him from the time I was 15 in high school through the end of my time at the Hart School as an undergraduate at 22. So it's about 7 years. And his influence was not just, I'm going on, I should cut it short because we got a lot to get to. His influence wasn't just as a saxophone player or as a musician, it was as a man. It was as he cared about me as a person and demonstrated that a lot. And I appreciated that. And that's something that I try to do with my students is let them know that they're much more than just someone who comes into my office once a week for a lesson, So anyway, J-Mac is someone I would say is a predecessor. A contemporary, again, there's so many, goodness. Boy, oh boy. Alexa's my contemporary now,
Oh, no way.
I'm super inspired by hearing what she does. There's so many, goodness. There's guys I went to school with like Chris Allen and Wayne Escoffrey and Julius Tolentino. I always love keeping up with what those guys are doing musically. There's folks that always inspire me, and not on my instrument. I don't think of them as contemporaries necessarily because I grew up listening to their music, but Wynton and of course Roy Hargrove, who passed on, and I always love goodness, Christian McBride, and there's so many. Renee Rosnes you mentioned earlier, and all the folks that are on my records. I'm fans of all of them, and saxophonists who inspire me. Josh Redman, I grew up, he's several years older than me, but I always loved listening to him, and Chris Potter, and people like this. So yeah, there's so many. It's hard to mention just a few. Kenny Garrett, and but in up and comers, there's so many. But I'll have to say, I listened back. I talked about arranging for big bands, and something I've been getting into. I did actually a concert at Dizzy's Club in 2016, September 16, a night of my big band and music. And I listened back to it recently because I'm, kind of reassessing what to do with certain arrangements of my tunes and trying to figure out some new tunes to write and whatever. So I listened to these older arrangements, and I listened to the rhythm section, and they just sound so good. Jonathan Barber, Daryl Johns, and Tabor Gable. They play so great. So I'm fans of all of theirs. So I could go on and on and on and on, but yeah, I'll give the floor to you, Alexa.
Oh man, yeah, this is a great question. Well, predecessors. I mean, my alto inspiration was Phil Woods, and I didn't get to study with him, but because I was like begging for lessons, but he was at the point where he wasn't really teaching anymore, but I did get to play with him a little bit, and so love his sound and everything. Contemporary, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not your no. I mean, I'm not going to put myself in that same plane, Jimmy. But I'm honored that you would say that. I think any of my peers are super inspiring. If I'm thinking of composers, Miho Hazama is a friend of mine who's an amazing composer. Saxophones, Emmanuel Wilkins is a great friend of mine. He just released an awesome record on Blue Note. Um, so many people. I love them all, and up and coming. I guess I can't think of specifics, but I would say that I did recently just judge Jazz at Lincoln Center's Essentially Ellington competition, and it was an international festival, and we heard so many incredible big bands and students and soloists from all over the world. So I think it's safe to say we've got a lot of amazing up and comers.
We do. And can I say something about Phil Woods? You mentioned him.
Yeah, please.
There was, I've been part of the jazz cruise, for
Yeah.
the last bunch of years. So one particular year, my son came with me. And at the time, my son was playing alto. He's playing more piano these days, but he was playing alto at the time. And Phil was on the cruise. And at this point, he was in a wheelchair and with oxygen, because I believe he had emphysema. So he couldn't get, and even in those days, I remember playing with him and his sound was every bit as big as it ever was. I didn't understand how that was possible.
I know.
and need oxygen. But anyway, but he was so sweet. He said, he had one of those kind of distinct voices. I won't try to butcher his voice, but I remember him saying, I remember introducing my son to him, in one of the dining rooms on the boat, and he said, you don't hesitate to bring him to me if he needs anything, or if he plays alto, bring him to me anytime, and I'll share whatever I have. Thought that was just super sweet.
That's amazing.
It never ended up happening, but just the fact that he was so warm and generous meeting my son for the first time is very
absolutely
cool.
Yeah, that's I think one of the last concerts I saw him play was at St. Peter's Church, and he got up there and it was a tribute. It was with Ryan Truesdell's Gil Evans project, so it was all that awesome music.
Yeah.
And he just got up there with the oxygen tank and then took it right off, and you could hear him like having trouble breathing, and then he just played the most insane alto cadenza, just like crazy, all the bebop lines. So amazing. Yeah. Chloe, how about our next question?
Yeah, so the next question comes from Andy on Facebook. Andy asks, what's the best way to fathom music theory for a beginner trying to raise their awareness and understanding?
The best way to fathom music theory is don't be intimidated by it, right? Take it slow, right? And understand that it's a process and it's a building of concepts, and don't be afraid to go slow. I often tell my saxophone players, because we work quite a bit on keyboard harmony in our lessons, because I feel like if you really have a really good harmonic sense of what's going on, that's going to translate to the saxophone. And unfortunately, we can't play chords on the saxophone. We can play, single note lines, but those are all rooted in keyboard harmony, right? So we take it slow. We start with two voices, third and seventh, and then the bass note. And then we add a voice, right? Once they can play through any of the chord progressions that they're dealing with that system, right? Very simple system. Then we move. We add a little bit to it. And once they can do that through all the chord, then we add a little bit to it. And then we can add some flat nines and sharp 11s and 13s. But we start basic, so you get the core element of the sound of the chord and of the progression. And then we add layers of kind of color, sophistication, whatever you want to call it. So, just from that little example, music theory is kind of like that as well. You start basic, and then you grow and grow and grow. It's a process. So just don't be intimidated by the mountain. Just take one step, you know, and then one step after that.
Awesome.
Alexa, you want to elaborate?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I have much to add, but I think just in terms of like resources right now, there are so many amazing resources online, even on YouTube. Like there are people that are putting out these videos that are amazing and very specific. So I think if you can find, I don't know, there's somebody that does a lot of YouTube videos. People always ask me, do you know him? Do you know him? And I haven't looked, but there are a few like really awesome music theory YouTube people out there. So if you're not able to find a teacher or even get like a kind of specific course of action, there are definitely resources out there. And I guess that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, this question is from Lewis. Lewis asks, there are many good musicians. What, in both of your opinions, separates the good from the great musicians?
Wow. I'll quote Billy Hart.
Ooh.
And this might not be a direct answer to that question, but I like the answer anyway, so I'll give it. I asked him one time, this is when I was on the road with Tom Harrell. We ran into him at a festival somewhere, a great drummer, Billy Hart. I asked him, because I was starting to teach at that point and coach small groups, you know, so there was a drummer I had who felt more comfortable playing 16th note based rhythms, you know, funk or rock, and a lot less comfortable playing the triplet based swing rhythm, right? So I asked Billy, you know, what would you tell a young drummer, you know, to get them to feel more comfortable with swing? And I thought he'd give me some answer about, you know, the triplet feel, and you accent this and you accent that. And what he said to me blew my mind. And that's why I thought of it when this question was posed. What separates good musicians from great? Because in my opinion, a good musician would say, okay, well, you do this with the triplet, and you do, you know, then you accent this, and then, you know, that's how you do it, right? But the great musician, this is what Billy said. This is how he answered my question without even much thought. This is how he answered. He said, well, if a young person wants to participate in a community, they will avail themselves of the people in that community, the practices of that community. They'll understand the norms and the function, how that community functions, and they will be able to participate in it. And that was his answer. And I was like, it doesn't get any deeper than that, or more simple, you know? It's a community, it's an experience, it's a sound and a feeling that you must immerse yourself in. And the great musicians have all done that on some level. And obviously we can talk about, you know, their dedication and their talent level and their drive and all those things that have to be present. But understanding that the music is more than just a sum of a bunch of rhythms and notes and patterns or whatever, that there's much deeper meaning in humanity, you know, for what we do. And there's a quote of John Coltrane saying, and I'm going to butcher, I don't remember exactly, but essentially like the reason why, you know, and of course he was a legendary practicer, you know, 16 hours a day. And essentially saying the reason why I do what I do is because I feel like I need to, my purpose as a man, right, and as a musician is to inspire others to be the best versions of themselves they can possibly be. So I have to do that with myself, you know? So there's a greater purpose besides just playing, just shredding on the saxophone. There's a greater purpose to why I spend 16 hours a day doing what I do. It's to elevate humanity in some small way. That's greatness.
Yep. Well, I don't think I can add to that either. but what comes to mind, I guess, is after Jimmy and after the train quote, it's sort of like executing versus contributing. So I guess I'm thinking of like there are many times with everything else going on in your life, where you could get on a gig and just kind of sit there and passively play through the gig, maybe, like just like you were saying, Jimmy, like the notes and the rhythms and the sum of the parts, but maybe you're not actively contributing, actively listening, even just in turn. It doesn't even, I mean, musically, it could be just in terms of interacting with people on and off the stage. So I think there's just having that intention behind it, and looking outside of yourself is probably the biggest thing.
And I find that is a difficult thing for some musicians to do, because the process of getting better means that you're really self-focused, you know? And when
Yeah.
you get to playing situations, when you're in that stage, then your playing sounds like that. You're just focused on what you're doing, and you're very kind of self-conscious about it. It takes, kind of a level of trust of yourself and of the people around you, to kind of let go of that and just focus on what's going on around you. Be a part of the dialogue. Be a part of, informing what the drummer plays, or commenting on what the pianist plays. That takes a lot more trust in yourself and in others. And so I find that that's a hurdle that young musicians kind of have trouble with sometimes. But you know even if you kind of got to fake the trust in yourself, it's good to start thinking along those lines, because you'll get better and better and better. And that instinct in you to listen, as well as play, will always, kind of make people want to play with you and make it. I got a comment. This is back when I was in college. I was in the monk competition, and they chose me as a finalist. And I was so incredibly nervous, and but I guess it ended up okay. And one of the comments I got was that when I stepped in front of the rhythm section, who are the three musicians in the rhythm section are three of my favorite on earth, and we've become friends.
Yeah.
In the year since, Kenny Barron, Christian McBride, and Lewis Nash. One of the comments I got from the adjudicators of this was when Jimmy stepped in front of that group and started playing, it felt like a band. It felt like his band. Instead of
Amazing.
him playing, great with a rhythm section. It sounded like a band. So the earlier you can develop that kind of outward focus, like Alexa was saying, the better off you'll be.
Amazing. That's a great story.
Well, I was terrified, because the adjudicator, I'm glad that they were seated in the way back of the auditorium and I couldn't see them, because they were, like, the light was on the stage and they were in darkness in the back, so I couldn't see. I knew that they were there, but it was Joe Lovano, Josh Redmond, Wayne Shorter, Jimmy Heath, and Jackie McLean.
Uh,
And I did my best not to look back there at all, because it would
I'm
have freaked
nervous.
me out.
I'm nervous right now. I'm nervous just thinking about it.
But no,
But
the more you can practice that skill, like just focus on what everyone else is doing and try to contribute, like you said, Alexa, you'll get better and better at it. And as you progress as an instrumentalist, right, those discussions, those conversations will become more and more kind of deep and meaningful with the musicians around you.
amazing. Thank you so much, Jimmy. So I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you. So I'm going to ask Chloe to drop Jimmy's website in there in the chat for everybody. Jimmy just released a record on April 3rd on Mac Avenue Records. It's called While Looking Up. So please check it out if you're looking for some new music. And then I'm also going to ask Chloe, can you drop the link for the Anna Grace Project? And Jimmy, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Anna Grace Project?
Yes, it was started by my wife, Nelba, in the weeks and months after our daughter was killed. And to honor her legacy and to do work that we felt proud to put her name on it. The work that is done through the Honor Grace Project, we're proud to have associated with our daughter's name. So the slogan is promoting love, community, and connection for every child and family. And it does that in many, many different ways. And please visit honorgraceproject.org to find more info.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Nelba, so much for all that you do. And it's just great to have you here. Great to see you again. Great to hear what you have to say. And I'm sure everybody just enjoyed being around you. So thank you, Jimmy.
thank you for asking me to do this. It was a pleasure and an honor, and I'm a big fan, so happy to do this.
Okay, well, when we can get together live, we'll do a well-rounded reunion, a
Sounds good.
reunion
Sounds
gig
good. All right.
for all
Excellent.
the people. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Chloe, I guess I'll pass it off to you first.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody for being with us tonight. Thank you to Jimmy and to Alexa for that wonderful conversation. We've had a busy day here with Summer Jazz Academy. I don't know if anyone has gotten a chance to check it out, but it was nice to have a quiet moment and enjoy this conversation. So as usual, we have lots of fun things coming up over the next couple of weeks. We have a new episode of The Well-Rounded Musician coming next Thursday, and Alexa will be in conversation with Riley Moherker. So looking forward to that. As I just mentioned, we still have Summer Jazz Academy going on. We're in the midst of week 1, and next week is another full week. It's been lots of fun. It's not too late to be a part of it, so if you're interested in joining, please visit jazz.org/SJA to sign up for any number of our daily offerings. That program, again, runs through Saturday, August 1st. Last thing I'll say is just a big thanks to everyone for being a part of the community. If you'd like to make a donation to Jazz at Lincoln Center, you can do so at jazz.org/donate. Any number of contributions is extremely welcome during this difficult time. And to our supporters and donors, we cannot thank you enough for everything you've done for us so far. And again, just keep track of us, social media, jazz.org spelled out, or here on Facebook, which you're probably already on, Jazz at Lincoln Center on Facebook. That's it for me, and I will turn it over to Alexa to say goodnight. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Chloe, as always. Thank you to the new and familiar faces for joining us. If you are around next week, Thursday, 8 p.m., I'll be chatting with Riley Moherker. And if you're looking for Jimmy or myself, our links are in the chats for all of you. Thank you again, Jimmy, for your inspiration and motivation.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.